Have you ever wanted to feel like you're swimming within a pillowy mound of mashed potatoes? Are you perhaps experiencing period cramps that make it feel as though you've been punched in the lower belly by the stinger? Or maybe you just want to find a way to pass the meaningless time between seasons of Has-Been Hotel? Well, if you have, then sex may be the answer for you, and if you're gonna do it, then why not hit the books? Because if there was ever a subject that rewards you for being studious, it is this one.
Look, here's a chapter on communicating your needs to your love partner.
What kind of filth are you reading?
But sadly, instead of teaching the kids to be afraid of their bodies and giving them the soul-killing shame at how God burdened their mangled lower bodies with dinkies and woohoos, Peggy Hill, whose address, by the way, is 84 Rainy Street, Arlen, Texas, area code 78203, for any true patriots out there who may want to talk with her, decides that she is instead going to indoctrinate the youth into knowing what a uterus is.
Well, they're damn sure gonna know the 18 stages of arousal, because Peggy Hill is gonna teach that class.
Or at least that's the kind of horrible thing that I would say if I was a chinless, involuntarily celibate douche nozzle or a sexually frustrated Midwestern mom, or if the show itself wasn't putting in so much effort to make it very clear that having a lack of education can really mess up your life. Those mothers that Peggy talks to at Bobby's baseball game are such a disturbing look into what happens if a person has turned a blind eye to the facts of sex. And of all of those moms, the most unsettling of all is this woman right here, Bonnie, who says, and I quote, "When my husband would crawl all over me at night and do his business, why, I would just close my eyes and think of them pretty flowers." Man, oh manatee. Ugh, that is just one of those extremely dark implications that really only works in a show like King of the Hill because it just says it out loud right in the middle of the damn day. Right in the middle of Dooley saying that Peggy's gonna flash her booberinos in class and Bill teaching us how to pick up a call girl in the Philippines.
Sume Hall. Or something like that.
But that aside, this scathing hot critique of anti-sex education wackadoodles is super fun and full of laughs. It only could have been made more enjoyable if Peggy had been given the keys to a magic school bus and had driven her class into the inside of a womb. A woman's womb.
What's that?
Girl, that's a booty hole.
Not a hole, Keisha.
A vagina!
This episode also shows us the importance of grounding titillating topics like this within a reasonable context. If Peggy were just talking about the sorry state of the silly putty situation between our legs just because she happens to have gotten on a kick after reading a magazine, a woman's magazine, then that would have created an odd logical jump for the audience to clear. But because Peggy is being drawn into a situation that she did not ask to be a part of, and considering her discomfort and general baggage with the subject, she has every excuse in the world to eject herself from this role if she so chose. In fact, everybody is encouraging her to quit and would likely even praise her for leaving the job, but she persists nevertheless. And it's not because she has always secretly wanted to teach the kids about the 15 stages of dating, but because this is her role as an educator and she has to do her job to the best of her ability. It is a classic underdog story where the whole world is saying, "You're a bum, Rock, you can't talk about that cock," but you find the grit inside of yourself to stand up and do it anyway. It is such a breath of fresh air to see sexual education taken so seriously because sex ed isn't like this evolving science. This isn't an area where we're going to be making huge leaps and bounds in human progression. It's not something like astrophysics or quantum mechanics or discovering why kids love the taste of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Nope, all you gotta know is a few baseline facts about how pee-pee is stored in the testicles and breast tissue and you're golden. No pun intended. But what's so wonderful and joyous about this episode is that they push the whole sex ed discussion into such hilariously overblown areas, such as Bobby being worried about being a slut or Peggy bringing a mysteriously vibrating bag into class, that it makes regular sex ed seem like a relatively boring thing to talk about. When Peggy is out here screaming vagina at the top of her lungs and Hank is showing us why it's called getting wood, then everything else is just whatever. By leaning into absurdity and this energetic daddy no, mommy yes power balance, it makes me invested in seeing who is going to win this fight over Bobby's education. But what especially rims my job is how the show dances around the question of morals right up until the climax. Because that's really the only main counter-argument against sex ed. It all comes from a moralistic, hyper-Christian fear of teens having sex outside of the Puritan ideal instead of recognizing the hard truth, which is that teens who want to have sex are going to find ways to have sex, whether they know exactly how to do it or not. It's a real catch-22 situation, because in order to make the risks, and yes, there are some actually pretty big risks in having sex at a young age, especially if you do it without protection, but to actually make those risks sound reasonable, you have to be able to describe what sex is, and yet a lot of these absence-only pushing programs think that just telling teens how sex works is going to give them like an orgasmic epiphany, and they're going to start recreating the opening scene of Devilman Crybaby right then and there. And even worse, it makes any slip-up or hormonal oopsie-daisy feel like something that is going to stain you forever and define your existence within society, which I think is too cruel of a sentence to lay on any kid who is still figuring out who the fuck they even are in the world. And Bobby demonstrates the harm in demonizing the basic facts of sex, as he says that the information that Peggy is teaching the kids is bad, which makes her in turn a bad person. And I think that's the real kicker here. It's that King of the Hill is trying to present the damage that can be done to a well-meaning kid if a simple subject like sex ed is made into this huge deal, instead of just treating it like another meh whatever subject that you learn in school.
I just wanted to say you don't have to worry about me, 'cause I'm never gonna have sex.
Loser! You're a loser! Are you feeling sorry for yourself?
By taking Hank's anti-sexual education stance to its most logical extreme, we are given an understanding of how harmful these tactics can be, which is what inspired me to go out and have sex a bunch of times. And it's because I was educated about the risks and took the time to understand the do's and don't do's of fumbling a phallus into a fearsome fistula that I was able to become the best slut I could be, instead of just another Bush League ball buster. And that wouldn't have been possible without this episode of King of the Hill providing me with the confidence to fuck picture book flowers, or whatever the hell it was banging on about. I don't know, I was too busy getting laid to pay attention. What's so unappealing about hearing your favorite reviewer talk about sex? I had sex. Although I do want to say that I don't think that this episode presented the best version of Dale, who has yet to become an actual funny character, and is currently still more of a concerning creepo, one who is barely salvaged by his semi-charming incompetence. I just greatly prefer Dale when he goes into his wild fantasies and crazy theories with a smile on his face and a pep in his step, rather than falling into this more like grim and sinister scheming mode.
Peggy, it's for you. It's Dale.
Yellow Dale.
You don't know who I am, but I know where you live.
This is also a strange place for Boomhauer, as later episodes will go on to characterize him as being the ringleader of the meat circus he calls a bedroom, and it seems odd that the show wouldn't allow him to have some words of wisdom for Bobby. Although I do want to give the show a little bit of slack as to where the guys are concerned, because they were so clearly a very low priority for the first season, with the writers being content to leave them on the back burner and instead just focus on getting the audience to like the Hill family first and foremost. And I really am starting to like the Hill family in this second episode, as Peggy shows her determination, Luann differentiates herself as a young person who is comfortable with her sexuality and doesn't see the topic as like a shameful area of discussion, and Hank's issues with education has more to do with government regulations than the actual information itself.
There's no way my son is learning the how-tos of romance from some bureaucrat regulatory handbook.
But whoa, hold on there, fella. Let's not get political here. Let's not trigger the independent thought alarm. So instead, I'll just say that Hank is upset that some stranger named Washington, yeah, that's it, is threatening to expand Bobby's mind by telling him what happens if you find a stranger in the Alps. This is what happens, Bobby. So yes, I like this episode. Quite a bit, actually. The only two mean-spirited aspects of the episode is one that happens at the baseball game where that one guy goes, yeah, go all the way, you perv, which I really like that moment because Hank looks around all exasperatedly and is like, oh my god, I can't believe it, oh, that's a shame, and then the other one is from Dale, but he's like an obvious moron, so who cares? If this episode happened to come on while I was vigorously trying to break down a dental dam, then I would once again prove myself to be a disappointment by stopping a little bit early to enjoy some quality television. So I am going to give this quotably quotable exercise in slut-shaming an extremely admirable 7 out of 10. Although, now that I'm thinking about it here, none of these lessons that Peggy gave ever mentioned the word consent, so I guess all this episode really did was turn these kids into knowledgeable rapists, which is the worst kind of rapist there is, and that forces me to bust the episode's score down to a lowly 5 out of 10. You know, I'd actually have given this whole thing a 10 out of 10 if it had deigned to answer my most burning sex ed question, which is, does Hank's narrow urethra cause him pain? I don't know, I just think that it can't be good for constricted tissue like that to have to endure heavy loads, pun intended. We're putting stress on a structure that wasn't up to code in the first place, you know? And say, are those just hairline cracks in Hank's urethra that I'm seeing, or something a little bit more concerning? The world may never know.
Oh, sweet, merciful heaven! I feel like Tara Reid on an average Tuesday!